are starting today with a topic that I know Jeff is very into, and so are many of you.
Very into.
Well, listen, my husband is. You're not alone.
Oh, your husband, yes.
My husband definitely is.
Oh, yes.
It's the fight against junk fees that catch so many of us off guard when we see a final bill. So how much is this costing Americans? Turns out, a lot. If you add it all up, we spend nearly $65 billion a year on these hidden junk fees. Well, today the president is meeting with business leaders from companies like Live Nation, Airbnb, SeatGeek, and more, and he's expected to announce that these companies have agreed to come clean with consumers and will now post the full cost of everything up front, so you know exactly what you're paying for. Some of the most hated junk fees include the fees charged for events like tickets to concerts, but there's a lot more. A recent survey listed bank overdraft fees, resort fees, mortgage fees, and credit card late payment fees. So what do you think of this new push for transparency? Does it make it better if you know the fees are up front? Or is this just window dressing since you're still being charged that same amount? What would you say, Jeff?
Window dressing. And I think you have to take the bank fees and late fees out of this conversation, because my whole point is, like, when I'm going to a concert with my wife for 2 tickets, what I'm paying in additional fees, I could get another ticket. And who gets their hands on processing fees? Who gets that? That's made up. A Malibu beach house, that's who gets that. For real, who gets that? It's not even a real thing. Someone just like, how do we make our revenue go up? Processing fees? Good one, Bob. Yeah. Right. So it's like, it's baloney, you know what I mean? So that makes me really angry when they're just adding on fees that don't even make sense, and it's not like it's going to a specific person. They're just upping their overall, from one year to the next, they have to make a profit margin, and that's what they're doing. So the president's saying, we're going to give it up front. I don't want to see up front. I want to see it off. It's doing is making me angrier about 10 seconds earlier. That's all it's doing.
I'm with Jeff on this one. I don't care about the transparency. I mean, I want transparency, but let's get rid of those additional fees.
Well, it's a first step in a very bipartisan pick. It's a smart pick for Biden, who doesn't want to deal with junk fees, both Republicans and Democrats. But I wanted to give you this. Uber had something called a safe rider fee. They imposed a $1 per ride surcharge in 2014, but it was Uber knowing, because it didn't do anything. It didn't go to anyone. It didn't make anybody safer. So these things, at least he's bringing up and highlighting. I'm glad to see an administration do that. But we need to go a step further and be like, we have a monopoly, because if you wanted to go to another concert, like you always say, there isn't one to go to. So that's not fair for him at all.
Do they do that with sporting events too?
Yeah. It's a monopoly too.
Any kind of ticket.
Yes. See, when you're bringing up the Uber $1 safe driver fee or safe ride fee or whatever, I feel like that's a part of the transparency issue as well, and also the accountability issue, because if you're saying that this is a fee that you have a right to charge, then shouldn't you also be required to use it towards what you said you're charging it for? And when you're talking about services like ride shares, I just did a ride share on Saturday. My bill, or my total, was $35. The driver only received 18 of it. So there's a lot of fees that are put in there. So I have an issue with that, because I feel like it's one thing to say, okay, these are your resort fees when you're using,
the amenities,
all the amenities, but I traveled during COVID and there were no amenities. They didn't take those resort fees off the bill. So what's up with that?
What's up with that?
Okay, so on a related note, we've all heard of inflation, but have you heard of tip inflation or tipflation?
No.
No, he is not. Okay, it is a term to describe how more and more businesses are turning to tips from customers in order to help cover their labor costs. How many of you are sick and tired of seeing this tip screen at more and more businesses? Does it ever make you feel totally awkward with the employee standing over you, waiting for you to decide how much to tip? Well, if you're sick of all the tipping, you're not alone. A recent survey found 2/3 of Americans now have a negative view of tipping, and tipping is down this year over last. And now some businesses are deciding to do away with tipping altogether, including an ice cream shop in Seattle. Here's what the owner of that shop explained to CBS News about the decision. Take a look.
Black employees at Molly Moon's were making a lot less than white employees.
You could tell that?
Absolutely. And so it became clear to us how unfair our total compensation system was. I have to say I'm highly annoyed at tipping now. It's really awkward, especially in the counter service interaction. To watch someone make a decision, it never feels good.
It's an interesting point. So is tipflation getting out of control, and is it changing rather how you tip folks? Erica, what would you say? Or Al, sorry, because I first posed that question to you and you said no, you'd never heard of it. So
I was listening to what that the woman being interviewed said, and she said it was really awkward. If you own a business, would you have anything in which your customers felt awkward? No, that's there because it's meant for you to feel awkward. I told you guys about this before COVID. I was at a coffee shop here in Denver, and they flipped that screen around, and not only did it start at 25%, it had little like words to describe the service, like wow, and I was like, which one's for oh my God? Because it was outrageous. It was out of control then, and the reason that they flipped that around to you is to make it awkward, because now if I tip 0, now what, you're gonna go walk away and make my food? It's tipping at the barrel of a virtual gun, and it's there for a reason. It's to make you pay more money than you want to. The reason that black book exists at the restaurant is for discretion. You close it, and when you open it, as we've all been wait staff, that's when you see what your tip is. You don't stand over the person while they're writing it out. This is meant for a reason. That's why Starbucks hands you that thing and says it's going to ask you some questions. It's not going to ask you some questions about your family and if you feel close to your parents. It's going to ask you if you're ready to give them some more money. Yeah, so it's all manipulative, and it's completely antithetical to what tipping was meant for, which was outstanding service.
Yeah, and I mean, we all came up in the service industry, so I'm very inclined to tip even if the service isn't that great. I'll do it because I feel like the next time I go to a lot of the same places over and over, and they take care of me because they know that I'll take care of them. So that's like an equal exchange, right? But I did have a situation where I got a personal service, and it wasn't like, you know, waxing or a haircut or anything like that.
Where are you going with this, Erica?
It was a personal service. I'm like, I don't even know if y'all want to know. But I did ask the woman.
You now.
And I said, there was a tip line, and I'm like, I'm just asking for clarification. Is this something that like your system just automatically generates, or is this something that is this a service people tip on? And she was like, well, yes, people will tip because we are taking care and prepping everything for you before you come. So I tipped, but I really was confused because it didn't seem like it was a medical office. It didn't seem like someplace that I would be tipping at.
I've never heard of that in a medical office.
I actually have when it comes to like my Botox.
But
that's
a right, and I would pay obviously always 20% or above for anyone that's actually working and doing something. But I do want to say quickly that if I were Biden, first of all, hello, I would have Howard Schultz, let's say, of Starbucks, and come in and say, why are we requiring the public to pay and subsidize our workers instead of your billion-dollar company raising the wages, perhaps getting a union, which they have been against many, many times, and understanding that a corporate entity takes care of their employees. Because right now, we're taking care of the employees. And that ain't right for anybody, the public or the corporations. Get Howard Schultz in there with Biden press conference. Why don't you raise the wages?
But Howard Schultz, I don't know, is the right example.
He is, because unionizing, he is in major trouble for really stalling for this company to go up. So that's one example.
The writers are on strike for trying to unionize, and on a bigger scale of tipping, if you want to talk about us as a people, as a community of taxpayers tipping, Walmart famously does not pay their full-time employees enough so they qualify still for subsidized wages.
Absurd. That's absurd.
That should be
Get the Waltons in there and have a press conference.
The rest of what they will not pay. And I've been to a bunch of Walmarts. The employees there are dedicated. They're on their feet all day, and it's undignified and unfair for their company you work all week and you still qualify for welfare.
Right.
Where they do that at? And I'm just saying, the idea that this goes on, it's ridiculous. But yet we're arguing about the green M&M and is it too sexy and all these kinds of things. And meanwhile, real Americans are having issues and have to be forced to ask for welfare, and you're working 40 hours a week.
And you're making billions of dollars.
It's really unfair, and we pick up the tab on all of that as taxpayers.
Right.
Well said, Albert Jackson.